All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening to discuss the next and final phases of the PPDR program. This presentation will be recorded and posted on the county's Marshall Fire Recovery website for those who cannot attend this evening. There are a couple objectives for tonight. One, we're here to introduce the program to all you for the first time as PPDR participants. The second one is to provide a general overview of the program scope, processes, and estimated timelines for completion. And finally, at the end of our short presentation, we'll open up a Q&A session to answer any questions you may have. Before we jump into introductions of the team that's been working behind the scenes on all this, I just wanted to take an opportunity to thank you all for your patience as we navigate this process together. We recognize that the tragedy and hardship that you've had to endure over the last 10 plus months has been really hard. And I can assure you that this team that's working on all of this is committed to helping and getting this closed out as efficiently and quickly as possible. Next slide, please. All right, so introductions. I'm Ryan Airy. I'm the program coordinator for the PPDR insurance phase of this program. I work in the Recovery and Resiliency Division of the County Administrator's Office. I've been with the county since the 2013 flood, and we're no strangers to disasters here in the county, unfortunately. But our team's committed to helping out, and I'll turn it over to Andre for an introduction.
Hi, my name is Andre Duarte. I'm actually president of Synergy Disaster Recovery, and we're part of the team along with Alejandro and Randall, who are looking at insurance policies and setting up the processes. And you'll hear me talk a little bit more when Ryan finishes his introduction. Alejandro?
Yes, my name is Alejandro Gutierrez. I'm working as project manager for Synergy Disaster on this particular project, and I have been working on the Marshall Fire project in the past several months.
Thanks, Alejandro. Randall?
Hi, I'm Randall Hart. I'm an insurance subject matter expert. I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and I'm working on the Marshall Fire now.
Thanks, Randall. And just so everybody's aware, Synergy's a disaster recovery consultant firm that we've contracted with to help augment our staff capacity and expertise to help us navigate through this program. So thanks. We're glad to have Synergy on to help. Next slide, please. All right, so here's a quick recap of where we are today. So as you all know, debris operations concluded on August 24th of 2022. That project came in both under budget and ahead of schedule. This PPDR program for the size and magnitude was unprecedented for the state of Colorado. And we're really proud of the outcomes, collaboration, and partnerships that were forged to get it done. In the future, we'll be sharing some of the successes, challenges, and failures that we endured throughout the course of this program with other community partners and state agencies so that they won't have to reinvent the wheel in the face of a disaster in their communities. So far, the estimated cost for the project has been roughly $35 million. We are still in the process of reconciling the final cost for the program. Our accounting team is working really hard in the background with our contractor to do that. The final opt-in number for the program was 566 property owners. So what that translates to is 566 insurance policies that we have to review here as a team. And lastly, of the 566, we've identified roughly 48 insurance carriers that we'll be working with to help close out this part of the process. Next slide, please. All right, so here's a little bit of an overview about the process and the program in general. The PPDR program was authorized under FEMA's Public Assistance Program, which is pretty atypical for something like this. But we're really thankful because without federal assistance, we would have not been able to do any of this work in the field. The program was just too big and too costly. Since it's a federal program, we are required to seek any debris removal insurance proceeds from private property owners if it's available. So that's why we're here today, pretty much. And then finally, this process is not designed to provide you insurance advice or assist in filing insurance claims. We're not insurance adjusters. We're here to look at your policies and determine if insurance coverage is available for the PPDR program, and then go from there. So a couple quick notes on that. We really encourage you to speak with your insurance agent or carrier about your specific policies. And we also have some other helpful links below from the Colorado Division of Insurance and the Rocky Mountain Insurance Information Association. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Andre to get into the nitty-gritty about the process, where we're at today, and where we're heading into the future. Andre?
Thank you, Ryan. As Ryan mentioned, we're in the process of collecting policies right now and contacting insurance owners. To date, we've received about 38 of the 566 policies out there. We've requested those. It's probably been a month going, but we wanted to know that the process has started. We're hoping to get some of those policies to us probably within the next month. So a lot of information should be coming out by then. The other thing I wanted to mention just ahead of time, we have received a lot of emails to the boulder debris insurance email through the call center that we've set up. And we do have some pre-registration questions that came in. So we have seen those. We're going to address those later on in the FAQs that will be uploaded to the county's website. So I just wanted to let you know that we have gotten those and they're not falling on deaf ears. We are looking at those. So a little bit about the insurance reconciliation process. There's basically 3 steps here that we're looking at. Ryan's covered the how. Now we're going to kind of go into the why of what we're doing here. Or sorry, he covered the why. We're going to go into the how. The first step is contacting insurers. As we mentioned, we've been working with the state and the DOI to get those insurance contacts and sending out those requests. That's where we are right now, and that's in process. The second step is analyzing those policies. Again, each policy is going to be reviewed for specific coverage. A copy of this analysis that we're performing will be emailed out to policy owners, so you know exactly what we're looking at and what, if any, coverage is available. And we'll go into some of that later. And then the last thing is just notifying participants throughout the process. For those of you who have coverage and haven't exhausted coverage, we'll be emailing you those analysis. We'll be, working with you and informing you when we're going to submit those claims to your carriers and working with you on a one-on-one basis to make sure that we've done our due diligence and more importantly, that you've had a chance to kind of review and agree with what we've analyzed. Lastly on that would be the county working with FEMA to kind of go through this duplication of benefits and make sure that FEMA is happy with the work that the county has performed to make sure they've done their due diligence to comply. Next slide, please. So we're going to go into a little bit of the details now on the policy. The first, again, is the collection of policies. At the beginning of the PPDR program, if you signed into it, the county did collect right of entry forms. And these forms allowed us to speak directly with the insurance carriers on your behalf. Part of the reason we did this was to expedite the program and to avoid any confusion between what we need from a FEMA compliance perspective, what policy information we really need, and to make it easier on homeowners of not having to get in the middle and trying to play go-between. As we mentioned before, we're in that process right now. We've contacted, I think, 46 of the 48 carriers at this moment, and we're working to get those other 2 carriers out there. So they're aware of our request. We've submitted those policies that we need information on, and that's where we are. Next slide. So once we receive your policy, the first contact you will get from the county will come from our email address that we've set up, and it's debrisinsurance@bouldercounty.org. That first communication is just going to let you know that we've received your policy and that we are beginning the policy review. On average, it's probably going to take about 2 days to review. And again, once we complete the analysis, we will send you a follow-up email with the results of those analysis. And that's when you'll know if coverage was available or coverage was not. Again, after this town hall meeting, as we were really holding on, you'll probably start seeing those emails coming through. So I wanted to remind everybody or to look for an email from debrisinsurance@bouldercounty.org and to make sure that you check your spam email box just to make sure that there's nothing in there. Next slide, please. So we wanted to show you an example of what this analysis is going to entail, and this is the first of 2 pages that you'll be receiving from us. If you notice along the top, you'll have information on your property, your owner. I know a lot of individuals here have questions about making sure that we have the right policy number and the right policy period. That's one thing I wanted to mention. Remember that the policy coverage that we're looking at is not the policy that you have in place today, but the policy that was in place during the event. So that would have been, I believe, December 30th. One of the most important things that everybody would probably want to look at is on the top right-hand side of the column or of this page. If you see where we have listed anticipated insurance proceeds, if that amount is 0, it means that that there is no coverage available and that the county will not be seeking any reimbursement from your property owner or from that property owner or their carrier. So many of you, when you get that email, if you just look at that top right, you'll find out whether or not you're going to the next stage or if you're done. So if it's 0, this is probably the last time you'll hear from the county, and you don't have to worry about doing any next steps. Other information on here is, as we mentioned, policy information, coverage information. And if you go to the next slide, please. The second page kind of summarizes where the claim payment process is with your carriers, or at least at this moment. So you'll see there some of the coverage, the amounts that were in that coverage, and it's just more detailed information on your policy. As part of this, in addition to these 2-page summary, you will be getting a policy declaration page as an attachment, and then the claim payment summary that was provided by your carrier. So if you have any questions on how we arrived at these numbers, that information will be presented on the email as well. Next slide, please. So now that we've kind of covered what's going to be on the analysis, I know this has been a subject of conversation. We wanted to talk about what debris removal cost really is. The simplest way to define it is debris removal coverage covers the removal of debris from the insured's property. Things that may have been blown onto your property, and then the extent to which the coverage is there and what's covered is really policy specific. So it's a general definition, but again, each policy or each individual insurance carrier defines debris removal cost separately. So one of the things that I wanted to discuss, because we've had some questions on this, is the difference between what debris costs were covered under the PPDR program, so the debris removal program, versus what may be covered in the insurance carrier. So in the PPDR program, what the county was authorized to perform was to remove any debris from the ash footprint itself. So that would be essentially where your primary residence was and all the debris that was in that footprint. The second thing that was covered was dead or dying trees that were a threat to the work crews. So this did not include trees that may have been burnt on the far side of your property, so it was very limited in the scope of what we could do. And then the last thing was the removal of foundations. Those are basically the three items that were covered. If we go to the next slide, again, we mentioned this, and you'll probably hear me repeat it more than once. Debris removal cost is really specific to your carriers. And so I wanted to provide some potential examples, and I quote the words potential because, again, you're going to have to check with your carriers of some of those costs that might be eligible. So some costs that we've seen that some carriers have included or not is fencing. So fencing that was along the side or the back of your house sometimes is covered. Another example might be the caissons. Again, a lot of caissons were left in place as part of this program. They should have been flagged. And the reason we did that was because it's really up to the property owner and the contractor to decide if those caissons need to stay or what they're going to do with them. But again, we advise everyone to speak with your insurance carrier on that coverage and to see what is available and what's not. Next slide. So as you mentioned, it's a bit of a recap. Once the analysis is done, you're going to have this email sent to you, and you're going to figure out, A, if there's coverage available, or if there's not. If you're in category A where there's no coverage available, there shouldn't be any further communication from the county. You can consider your case closed. We're going to go into now when coverage is available and how the county is going to work with your carrier to request a claim check from your carrier specifically. I know some of you have received checks in the mail. And again, until we look through those policies and determine if there was any coverage, can't really speak specifically as to whether or not we may need to work with you to get those fundings back. But if we go to the next slide, when their debris removal coverage is in fact available, we want to encourage you, the property owner, to notify the county whether or not you have any outstanding or anticipating expenditures that may not have been submitted to those carriers. Again, we're receiving the information at a certain point of time. And so if you're in that process of submitting claims or thinking that you're going to have claims, we'd like for you to reach out to us specifically, either at the email address listed here or through the hotline number that we set up. And that number for everyone is 877-HELP-720. We're giving property owners 30 days to notify the county. Again, if you have any anticipated or outstanding claims, before we send our claim request to the insurance carriers. When we do that, we'll be working with the carriers. Again, we'll let you know that we've submitted that claim to the carrier, but we really ask that you notify us again, if you can use this 30-day window just to notify the county whether there's any outstanding or anticipated expenditures, to let us know so that we know that we can work on you on a one-on-one basis and wait to make that claim until those claims are settled, per se. Next page. Then the last step in this overall process, again, is once the county receives that claim check from your insurance carrier, we will again send an email from Debris Insurance at Boulder County letting you know that we've received that check and that essentially your case is closed. Next slide, please. So that is the process in a nutshell. Again, we'll reiterate a general time frame for this, as we're assuming about 6 months from beginning to end. Again, not all policies are coming in at once. They're being staggered. So as soon as we get them, we will be reviewing them. As we mentioned, we are getting some of those policies today and in the next few weeks. And so once those policies are coming in, we'll be reviewing them in the order that they were received and notifying homeowners or property owners as to when that analysis is complete. Next slide. So a little more information for everyone. If you have any questions, we have set up, the county set up a website, bouldercounty.gov. www.fema.gov/debris-insurance. On that website, again, you'll find our frequently asked questions. There will be a copy of this presentation put on the website or placed on the website, in addition to the insurance analysis example that we have listed here in this presentation. Again, if we have any questions, we encourage you either to send an email to debrisinsurance@bouldercounty.org or to call the hotline at 877-HELP-720 or 877-435-7720. Again, for specific insurance coverage information, we do ask you to reach out to insurance agents and your insurance carriers, as we're not set up to go into coverage information during your policies outside of the debris removal cost. And then we have some useful links that have been set out there. Colorado Division of Insurance has a good webpage to assist homeowners with some questions. Rocky Mountain Insurance Information Association is another one. And then we do have the recovery navigators that the county has hired to assist property owners through the whole insurance claim and rebuilding process as well. Next slide. Well, that should be the last slide. So that concludes our presentation, and we're going to open up the forum to some questions and answers, and we'll sit back and see what questions we have.
Thanks, Andre. And just an administrative suggestion here. So for the Q&A session, we encourage participants to submit their questions with their first and last names. That way, if we're unable to answer your question tonight, we have a mechanism to follow up with you to get those questions answered. Thanks again, Andre. Appreciate it. Looking forward to your questions, everyone.
So Ryan, I think I'll take this time as people are coming up with some questions, maybe to address two items that we've seen some questions coming in on, and just to kind of mention, maybe a lot of people have these questions, so we kind of grouped these responses. One of the questions that has been asked deals a lot specifically, again, with debris removal cost. A lot of people want to know, since they've incurred some costs after the PPDR program, examples, stump removals, or just other trees that were cut down, what can they do about these costs? Again, I know I'm sounding repetitive, but I just want to make sure that we're clear. What the county is encouraging you, again, to work with your carrier to make sure, to see if there's any coverage for reimbursement. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody works through their carrier. As we mentioned before, the PPDR program itself, the actual removal operations are done. And so we wanted to make sure that if you have any costs, again, work with your insurance carrier to see if you have coverage available for that. See, we're starting to get some
Thanks,
questions.
Andre. Yeah, the questions are starting to roll in here. So I'll go ahead and start to address some of these here. Okay. So one of the questions is, if we have already been paid by our carrier, can we contact you to just pay you that over to the county now? Andre, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to take that one?
I'll take that. So again, until we get your policy and actually analyze your policy, you may owe the county nothing. So unfortunately, it's a sit and wait game. As fact as until we get that policy and do that review, we can't tell you whether you owe anything. You may know nothing at all at this point. But as soon as we get those policies, we'll be reaching out. So again, that hope is as soon as we get your policy, within 48 hours, you should have some type of analysis performed and sent to you. And at that point, we can work with you to determine what, if any, money the county is expecting from you. But the majority of these cases, we're anticipating of collecting that money directly from the carriers, but we'll see how that goes.
Thanks, Andre. Okay, the next question is, if you have further work to do, how long do you have to complete this work? 3 months, a year, 2 years? How long do you have? Andre, did you want to take that one?
I can try. At this point, again, if you notify the county that you have some expenditures that you plan to submit for debris removal cost, I think the appropriate thing or the fastest way to do this is, again, speak to your insurance carrier and figure out what, if any of the work that you are completing is going to be covered under your insurance policy. Because if it's not, then it really doesn't affect our process, and you have enough time to do what you need to do whenever you need to do it. I'm not sure if the municipalities have a rebuilding schedule in place. You'll have to check with Superior or Louisville or Boulder as far as how quickly you have to build back on your homes. But the first step there is, again, reaching out to your insurance carrier, seeing if there's any coverage available for what cost you're anticipating. And again, if they say it is covered, then contact the county and we'll work with you on a one-on-one basis to let you know what timelines are available there.
Thanks, Andre. The next question I'm seeing is, my insurance policy includes money for debris removal, but this money would be deducted from my dwelling coverage. Does this count as having no coverage? I'm underinsured, so all of the dwelling money will be spent. Thank you. So maybe Andre or Randall, you want to tackle that one?
I'll give this one to Randall.
So pretty much if you're underinsured, depending on what the policy states, it's gonna be up to policy limits. So most insurance policies, and again, I'm just speaking in generalizations without actually having reviewed your policy in particular, but generally speaking, if you hit or surpass policy limits, then FEMA does not take a reduction from you on that.
Thanks, Randall. Just looking for the next one here. Okay, the next one is, I'm assuming correspondence will tell us where to send the check. I can answer this one. So yes, after the analysis complete, if you have already received the check from your insurance carrier, that correspondence will provide guidance on where you can send the check to the county, assuming that you do owe the county for that work. Okay, here's the next one. Can we still incur new cleanup costs, stump removal, etc., that we could still pay for out of our insurance debris removal proceeds? I have received that money. I wouldn't need to submit it to them. Randall or Andre, do you want to tackle this one? I think it's in the same kind of vein as if the person can get this covered under their insurance policy, then yes, we would encourage them to do that before we deduct anything from.
Yeah, I think that's the best
portion. Yeah,
I think that's the best course of action. If you gone ahead and incurred those costs, submit them forward anyways, just so we have records of them. Again, once we have your policy and we determine if there's any coverage available, we can work with you on a one-on-one basis there. But again, we ask for your patience as we analyze those policies to kind of discuss these situations on a one-on-one basis.
Thanks, Andre. Next question is, how are you determining what to charge each homeowner for debris removal of their particular lot? If our debris removal coverage is more than the cost to clear, you don't take it all, you don't take all of it, correct?
I'll try to answer this. So it's a two-part question, and it has come through. So with relation to cost, the minimal cost for each property was approximately about $45,000. Again, the way the contract was billed, it was a per parcel basis. So there was general line items on there. I say approximate because there are some items that could have adjusted that number. An example that comes to mind is the number of trees removed from your property. But in essence, we're anticipating most of those policies to come in at that $45,000. The second part of that question is, again, if there's coverage for say $70,000 or less, we're only seeking that amount on that policy. So if you have less, say your debris removal coverage is only $15,000, then only $15,000 would be what the county is seeking, not the full 45. At no point here is the county looking to go after the property owner outside of their insurance proceeds. So if you have any questions about, I know there's some questions about installment plans or having to come out of pocket, it is not the county's intent to make homeowners to come out of pocket specifically.
Thanks, Andre. The next question is, what would be a situation where we would not owe, even though we have received a debris removal check from our insurer? Randall? Randall, I'll give you the more complicated ones.
I appreciate that. If you can show exactly what the debris removal check from your insurer, if you can show where that went and show that it was not items that were eligible as part of this debris removal program, then that documentation will go to help show FEMA, yes, you did receive a payment. However, it was not for eligible items, so it should not be reduced.
Thanks, Randall. So there's a lot of questions coming in here. Okay, here's the next one. I'm seeing that private contractors averaged about $35,000 for complete debris removal on our neighborhood on rather large lots. I'm surprised that PPDR is so much higher than private contractors. Can you explain this difference? I'll take a stab at this one. There's no way for us to really know what the contractors bid on, what insurance or bonding requirements other private property owners required of their contractors. There's just endless variables that go into project costing. So without having an apples to apples comparison, it's hard to say. We can tell you that the $45,000 to complete 566 property owners was roughly half of what we were expecting based on other industry guidance and FEMA estimates at the time. So we're pretty pleased with the cost of each one of those lots. Okay, the next question is, I am confused about the additional claims. If we haven't gotten all money from insurance yet, and they are paying us as we go, i.e. after foundation is in, etc., should we let you know that at the email you sent and wait until the claim is settled? Trying to digest this one a little bit here. Andre or Randall, do you have a good answer to that one, or maybe that's something that we'll have to follow up with?
I think we're going to have to follow up because I think there's some questions about rebuilding. And again, I think each insurance carrier is handling it different. We're seeing some people just being paid out their full amounts. with no questions asked by carriers, it seems like this individual may be only getting paid as expenses are incurred, but I'm not quite clear if these are, when we're talking about rebuilding foundations and such, whether that's the case. So if we have their information, we can follow it up directly. Again, once we have your policy, I think we'll have a lot more information for you, hopefully to answer those questions.
Yeah. And Andre, just to clarify a quick point, if an individual property owner has more insurance, debris insurance proceeds than what the cost of the program is, we will never take more than what it costs to complete the work. So for example, if the lot costs $45,000 to complete and you have $100,000 in debris removal insurance, the county is only going to take the $45,000, the actual amount that it costs to clear that lot. We want to keep as much money in your pocket as we possibly can. And the only reason why we're here is because the federal programs require us to make sure that there's no duplication of benefits between private insurance and federal aid. Okay.
Hey, Ryan, I'm
Yeah.
gonna read you a question that I think you have answered through all of the presentation, but I think is one that should be repeated.
Okay.
So my insurance policy includes money for debris removal, but this money would be deducted from my dwelling coverage. Does this count as having no coverage? I am underinsured, so I need this money.
Thanks, Katie. Yes, so but without seeing the policy, the general answer is we will not take insurance proceeds that could potentially go to rebuilding. It's only insurance proceeds that are dedicated for debris removal. We want to maximize the amount of funding that you have to rebuild. And we're committed to that. And our state and federal partners are as well.
And could you, Andre or Ryan, reiterate the one-on-one help options that are available, the email and the phone number for people? We have some questions about that.
Yeah, of course. So this slide PowerPoint presentation will be posted on the website, so those resources will be available. If you have specific questions about your policy or questions about this program, there's two ways that you can contact us. It's through that debris insurance at Boulder County email address, and then there's the hotline that Andre mentioned. And we can post those in the chat, I believe, so that everybody has those readily available.
And again, I just want to reiterate the purpose of this team, again, is only to speak to debris removal cost and us seeking that reimbursement. If you have specific policy information and what your carriers cover or what they don't, again, we're going to ask you to reach out to your carriers on that. It's we're not geared here to go line item by line item on your policy. That's going to be handled by your insurance carrier. But as far as debris removal costs are concerned, we're here to answer those questions. But submit your questions, as Brian mentioned. Again, that email, I'm looking at it right here, is debrisinsurance@bouldercounty.org. So you can email your question there, or you can reach out to the hotline, which is 877-HELP-720. Again, 877-HELP-720.
Thanks, Andre. And it looks like Natalie just posted in the chat as well. One more question here I'm seeing. What if we have less coverage than the $45,000 you want, plus the money we spent to remove the burned out landscaping and fencing that PPDR did not cover? So I think what the question here is, if you have less coverage, but you used a portion of that coverage to clear out work or items that were not included in PPDR, what do we do then? So Andre, I think you touched on this a little bit, but it's the offset that we talked about. So can you just, for the sake of repeating, go ahead and clarify that?
If I'm understanding correctly, again, if you have less than the 45,000, then the only thing the county will be seeking is whatever that minimal coverage. So say you had $10,000 of coverage, it would be that 10,000. If you believe you have cost that should be offset, for lack of a better term, we're encouraging you to speak to your insurance carrier and submit those claims to them. Only they will decide whether those costs can offset that debris removal cost. So they'll make that determination. If they say no, and you can't offset those, then again, we're required by FEMA policy in this example to go after, or to request a full 10,000. Again, most of this debris removal coverage is only available if it's in an endorsement form, if you submit costs. Otherwise, it's not as if, and Randall, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's an endorsement, the insurance company is not just going to pay you that amount unless you've incurred those costs. So it's not like we're taking money out of your pocket. That money probably would not have been paid out on the policy anyways. But again, on a one-on-one basis, once we get your analysis, we can answer those questions. So I encourage you again, document those costs, submit them to your carrier, make sure that they're aware of them. And if you're in the process of negotiating those claims or fighting those claims with your carrier, let us know so that we can mark your file. And as we're going through our policy review, we'll make note of that and work with you on a one-on-one basis.
Andre, I have a question related directly to that. So if someone has their check paid out, they have already received their debris funds from their insurance carrier, and now they want to use them, say, for stump removal, fence removal, what should be their process for making sure they can use the money and still not owe more money to the county than they spent? Or like they just need to keep track of the costs, just like if they hadn't already been paid. They've been paid, so they just need to keep track of the costs in the same way, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Keep your receipts, keep your invoices, receipts, and then we can work with you to figure out what, if any. Again, some of those debris removal costs are being paid out as far as, again, I think Randall was referring that there's a full limit, policy limit. So even though your policy said that let's call it $350,000 includes debris removal costs, some policies will specify that if you hit full limits, and you don't need to submit those costs. So again, until, and I know I sound like a broken record, until we have your policy in hand to review, it's very difficult to say, hey, you're gonna have to pay us back, or B, no, that's you hit your limits and we're not seeking that.
Then we have some questions about people that have money for debris removal, but they've been told by their adjusters it's only available when their dwelling coverage is exhausted. What happens in that process?
Randall?
I'll see if Randall can handle that one.
So if you have debris removal that is technically available as part of the policy, but the stipulation is you have to exhaust those policy limits, then when your policy limits are not being exhausted, the debris removal is not going to be paid out. So if insurance is not going to pay you for debris removal, then that is not an anticipated cost or amount that you'll be receiving from the insurance company, which means FEMA would not be able to reduce that funding from you because it's not going to be available.
Thanks, Randall. And Katie, thanks for sending these questions in.
No problem, Ryan. So I
Roxini?
think between Ryan and I, we have all the questions answered. If somehow we didn't answer your question, maybe type it again and we'll get it answered real quick before the end of the meeting. Our apologies if we missed it. I see a question that was misread. Billy, if you could retype your question for us to track it, then we'll get it answered right away. We received a check from our carrier written to us and the county. We have more debris to remove. How do we cash the check to pay for this private removal and then pay you? We want to build and we cannot wait.
The ALE is running out. Okay. So Billy, that's something we'll probably have to talk with you individually offline about. And why don't you go ahead and send us an email at the Boulder County debris email address, or give us a call on the hotline so we can touch base with you individually on that question.
Also, kind of related, my carrier wrote the debris check to my mortgage holder. They're holding that in escrow. Will I have to coordinate that, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's something, Katie, that we can also follow up with individually, that property owner.
And if you can follow Ryan's advice to Billy and email the debris so they can follow up with you directly, that would be helpful to make sure we get your question answered. Can you please reiterate the point made about caissons? I am unclear if debris removal program handled caisson removal or not. It would not be a long time before one can figure out costs related to caissons.
So I can speak to what I know currently. In the PPDR program, I believe caissons were left in place and flagged. So they were not removed. Some people were asking if they were removed. On the majority of properties, again, without knowing your specific property, I couldn't tell you whether it was or not. I do encourage you to speak either to Superior or Louisville. They know what was performed on your property, but they were left. What I understand is that they were left in place and flagged for homeowners to work with their contractors to figure out what to do with them. They can be reused or repurposed or what have you. But I don't believe they were removed as part of this program.
Last comment was no caissons were flagged in our neighborhood despite multiple requests to both the county and individual contractors. Yeah, we can't speak to the operations side of what occurred in the field at the time. If they were left on your property, they were simply just not eligible for the program.
And again, if it's a neighborhood in Superior, reach out to Superior. I don't know if they're working on that, or Louisville or Boulder County specifically.
We have a section of fence on the exterior of a lot that is maintained by the town of Superior. This was left behind. How can we figure out what to do with this? Do we ask the town, remove it ourselves, just leave it there?
We would encourage you to talk with the town first before you touch any of their property, and then go from there. See if they have a plan in place to remove that particular fence, or they might grant you permission to remove it yourself, but we can't speak on behalf of the town. So definitely encourage you to reach out to town representatives on that one. There was a question on vegetation. And that's something, so the vegetation, if there is still vegetation left or that grows back and construction isn't going to begin until next year, but it needs to be removed right before it begins, can we hold on to those funds until construction is scheduled? Yeah, that's something that we'll probably need to chat with you offline about. It's probably going to be really dependent on what your policy says and whether or not that's covered. So we can definitely follow up with you on that one. All right, we have roughly 7 minutes left. If we haven't answered your question or if we have follow-up to do on our end, please don't hesitate to reach out. So there was a comment on the caissons. Just an FYI, we did talk with the city of Louisville about the caissons at the time. They also tried to advocate on our behalf with the county to no avail. I would just adjust how you would talk about this since it was a sore point with a lot of them. Yeah, again, I apologize that the caissons weren't removed. I don't know the extent of that program and can't really speak to it, so I apologize. Katie, are you seeing any questions that we may have missed?
I do not see any questions that you have missed, and I see no new ones.
Okay, well, if we're not seeing any additional questions, we can end the meeting a little early. We do have some homework to do on our end. See that we do have some follow-up. Again, encourage you to reach out to the debris insurance email address, the hotline that we have set up, and looking forward to working with you all. We certainly want to be in your corner to get this done as soon as possible, and we appreciate all your patience. So thank you so much.